The Falcons absolutely no-showed against the Carolina Panthers, and it's causing us to question everything.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everyone, to another illustrious episode of the Locked On Falcons podcast, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Mazda moving the game forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Now, if you do not know me, I'm your very humble host, Aaron Freeman, a.k.a. Mr. Drew, a.k.a. Sirius Black, a.k.a. Mr. a.k.a. And I've been covering the Atlanta Falcons for almost 2 decades, formerly at falcfans.com, RIP, still going strong as the humble host of this illustrious podcast. And I thank each and every one of you that goes strong with me as everydayers. That means you make this podcast your first listen each and every day. And all you got to do to become an everydayer is subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So today's episode might be shorter and sweeter than we typically do in these rapid reactions. But basically, we're going to outline how the Falcons got absolutely annihilated in all 3 phases on this Sunday, where they lost 30-0 to the Carolina Panthers in week 3. And let's get into sort of it. My big takeaway is, usually my takeaway after games like this, Falcons, they're not that good, right? And the expectation going into this game was, coming off that impressive win against Minnesota, are they going to be able to make a statement, be able to beat a down bad Panthers team that's struggling in their 0-2 start? Or are they going to come back down to earth a little bit, right? That's been the thing that's always been my mantra on this podcast, much to the chagrin of some of my listeners, the casuals, not necessarily everydayers. But, we tend to not get too down after the losses. We tend to not get too high after the wins. The truth is somewhere in the middle. And sort of when the Falcons were coming off that Vikings win, it's like, okay, they're probably not going to be as good. Is Carolina going to have the get right game that typically teams have against the Atlanta Falcons? And the answer is yes, they did. Carolina was able to do everything that they wanted to do in this game, and the Falcons were able to do none of the things that they wanted to do in this game. And it's causing a lot of people, rightly, to question this coaching staff, right? Coaching staff had a lot of questions. I had a Locked On Falcons Insider hit me up and like, does this loss mean that Raheem is on the hot seat? It's like, Raheem's been on the hot seat, guys. Again, sorry for going into this rant, but this is the thing that I always find fascinating about fans. The collective amnesia that occurs every offseason, that everybody forgets the ups and downs of the NFL season, that we all just assume it's all going to be ups, right? Because the hype train tells us it's all going to be ups. There's no downs. And today was a down. And there was inevitably going to be downs. And what people that were sitting here telling you this summer that like, oh, Raheem's not on the hot seat. It's just Terry Fontenot's on the hot seat, the Falcons GM. They need to win to save Terry's job. But, Raheem's going to be fine. It's like, I don't think you guys understand what happens during an NFL season like you saw on Sunday. Like all that anger that everybody is feeling right now is what happens typically in the NFL season. So to me, yes, this coaching staff has a lot of question marks. They laid a goose egg, or they didn't lay a goose egg, but they laid a complete crap burger of words escape me, guys. I cannot eloquently speak about this game. Last year against the Broncos is basically what I'm trying to say. And they had that one game, and this has got to be their one, right? We don't want to give you one terrible performance like this. It should be 0. That number in terms of the games that you have like this should be 0, but you got 1, and now you got to figure it out. There's going to be, no goodwill, right? There was a lot of goodwill for the last week after coming off of the primetime win against Minnesota, but you gotta pick it up against next week against Washington. You got Buffalo, you got San Francisco, and like going into this game, I was like, yeah, I want to find I'm going into this game, this Carolina game, expecting the Falcons to win. I'm not expecting it to be the prettiest win, but I'm curious how if they win, how they win. Is it impressive, or is it just skating by the skin of their teeth, and we didn't get the win. So let's talk about Penix's struggles, right? Because that's probably the biggest thing to focus on and probably the biggest talking point. Michael Penix struggled in this game. 18 for 36, 172 yards, 2 interceptions, including a pick six. Let's get the pump meter out of the way. He got a 0 on the pump meter, right? For those of you that are new here, don't know anything about the Penix pump meter, it is something that we are inventing here for Locked On Falcons, kind of a sequel to the Kirk Cousins chaos meter that was bequeathed to us last year from Locked On Vikings. And there's 4 levels to the pump leader. There's 0 pumps, 1 pump, 2 pumps, 3 pumps, right? 0 pumps is basically a nothing burger. And hey, Falcons get a nothing burger. Michael Penix, you get a nothing burger. 0 pumps is bad, basically, right? 1 pump is just like, okay, Penix is doing his job, managing the game, putting the team in successful situations, putting him in position to win the game. 2 pumps is, chef's kiss. That's the maximum pumps, allowed for you to play at a high level, perfect peak Penix, whatever you want to call it. And then 3 pumps is too many, right? And if you're not familiar with where this comes from, it's built off of a Key and Peele sketch from many, many years ago. Go Google it and you'll understand. But 0 on the pump meter for Michael Penix. Accuracy was not there. There were miscommunications between him and the receivers. To me, not going to dismiss it, but like, we're just going to kind of chalk this up to, this is what happens with having a young quarterback. Again, a lot of people, don't realize that this is what Penix's 6th start in the NFL. You're going to have ups and downs. I remember back during the summer, whenever we talked about Michael Penix's quote unquote accuracy concerns, I got a lot of comments on those videos. Shout out to the commenters. We love you here on Locked On Falcons. They were like, why are you talking about this? This is not a thing. And then, you watch the game today and it's like, yeah, it's a thing. And what we talked about then was like, there are probably going to be games once every 3 or 4 games where Michael Penix is just missing throws. And hopefully this is that one game every 3 games, right, where he's just going to miss some throws. And that's just going to be kind of life with Michael Penix until these accuracy concerns get dialed in a little bit more. The miscommunications, again, you know what I'm going to say. If you've been an everyday of this podcast, you know what I'm going to say. Like, man, these receivers and the quarterback don't seem to be on the same page. We saw that in the red zone last week. It certainly didn't seem to be the case this week against the Panthers. And it's like, man, if only there was a season before the season, some might call it a preseason, where you can play games, exhibition games, where you can work out some of the kinks in your offense. But, again, the Falcons, we don't get off the slow starts, according to a certain NFL head coach that may or may not coach the Atlanta Falcons. We definitely do not get off the slow start. So this is not a slow start. This is just whatever. So, again, a lot of these issues that we've been talking about. So they got one more week offensively to get it right. I know a lot of people were questioning Zach Robinson's play calling. It's funny how, like, when you can't blame Kirk Cousins for all the Falcons problems, now it's like, okay, well, Zach Robinson's going to be our new scapegoat for all the problems, which, is understandable. Like, again, as someone who was criticizing Zach Robinson last year, first, by the way, shout out to the YouTube comments first, by the way. When it came to criticism of Zach Robinson, I'm just sitting here going I can't get mad at a C student for being a C student. And right now, so far, Zach Robinson has shown himself to be a C student. Now, to Zach Robinson's credit, the first month of last season was not very good. Right? We were sitting here having these same exact conversations about Zach Robinson the first 3 or 4 games of last year. And then they kind of figured it out after week 5. And so we kind of need you to figure it out week 4 of Zach. And then we can't wait till after the bye week. We can't. That's the situation right now. And Raheem and these guys got to figure it out. So those are my thoughts on the Falcons offense. Let's move on, talk about the Falcons defense. Oh yeah, Kirk Cousins played also today. I'm sure that will be a talking point for other people. That's not going to be a talking point for us. It was garbage time, but it's because of the situation here in Atlanta, because it's the Falcons, baby. And nothing can be easy, right? It's just like, okay, well, now we get to talk about a quarterback controversy in Atlanta, just like last year. And the more things change, the more they stay the same. So with that being said, let's move on. Let's talk about this defense, why the defense struggled, but the scoreboard is a little misleading, but where are the areas where this defense needs to get better? And we'll get into that as we continue today's Locked On Falcons. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off for you when you make decisions every single day. You and I both do that. But, on Prize Picks, when you make those decisions, being right means cashing in. Prize Picks is the simplest and fastest way to get in on the action this year. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections, and you can turn it into real prizes all in less than 60 seconds. Whether it's Kyle Pitts more receiving yards or Michael Penix more interceptions, those are winning projections. But that's the beauty of Prize Picks, is just you for the projections. So everybody on the planet could have picked Michael Penix on more on his interceptions and would have won money. So download the Prize Picks app today and make sure you use code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 off. You'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 play. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. It is indeed good to be right. So let's talk about the defense. And the big question was, is this pass rush for real? And the answer is no. Based off of today's, the answer that we got today is no. Right? According to Next Gen Stats, Bryce Young was only pressured on 7 plays this game, 26% of the time. We went into this week being like, oh, okay, the Panthers are down 2 starters. This interior D-line is going to be able to feast after a 6 sacks performance against Minnesota. I watched the game last week and saw the pressure dip in the second half of the game, and that was to me a yellow flag of being like, oh, when they play zone heavy, and it just felt like there were too many plays where JJ McCarthy last week in the second half of that game had all the time in the world to throw. But the Falcons did wind up getting effective pressure in the second half, but it was a bit of a yellow flag, and I was a little concerned. It's like, is this pass rush for real? And the answer is no, it's not, because they didn't do anything in this game. Caden Ellis had the only sack in this game, just not bringing it. And we talked about this on the Falcon Squad, the hour-long postcast that we did immediately after kickoff, or the final whistle, I'm sorry, earlier today, if you're watching on Sunday. And basically, is this the hallmark of having a young team, right? Where maybe they were smelling themselves, to use the parlance of one Jarvis Davis, Locked On Sports Atlanta. Maybe they, or to use the parlance of Tanisha Batiste, maybe they were reading their press clippings a little bit with some of these young players, and sort of basically broke down like, young players, what you don't, what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And, that can be a strength, that can be a weaknesses, that can allow you to be like, oh, I don't understand. You like when, for example, like the Falcons, those young players may look at Josh Allen and be like, yeah, what's the big deal? It's Josh Allen. Like, I don't know. I don't know anything about this dude. I never played this dude before. I don't understand how good this guy is. So they can go into that game with a lot more confidence. But then at the same time, it's like, oh yeah, we beat the Vikings, and we're gonna do this every single week, and maybe don't lock in. And so the Carolina Panthers catch you sleeping, and that's kind of what happened in this game. Panthers were able to control the line of scrimmage, both when it came to protecting Young, when it came to running the football. Carolina's rushing success in this game, and look at the final stats, I'll probably have that for you tomorrow, but like, I know they ran for like 110 yards. So you look at the box score, I think it was like 30 carries for like 110 yards. It's not that impressive, but they were just consistently able to chip away, getting 5-6 yards every single time. And so like, when you look at this 30 points, like, it's not a bad performance from the Falcons defense. It by no means is, because again, 7 of those points were caused by a pick six. Another 7 were given up. Yeah, after the last touchdown was after Penix threw another pick that set up the Panthers deep in Falcons territory. And so at that point in time, it's like, okay, well, they're going to score. So I guess you could blame the defense for not stopping them and forcing a field goal, but they did stop them on 3rd down, and they just didn't stop them on 4th down. But we didn't talk about this last week, but it was something I noticed rewatching the film. The run defense wasn't good last week. That one of the things that was interesting to me with watching the Vikings game was that they weren't that effective at stopping the run last week. It's just the Vikings just kind of abandoned the run game, which is more an issue for the Vikings than it was for the Falcons. But in all 3 games so far, I know will be interesting to see if it gets confirmed when we watch the film. But my impression watching the game live was that when the Falcons get into their nickel front, like they struggle to stop the run. That was the case against Tampa Bay. That was definitely the case against the Vikings. And it looked to be the case against the Carolina Panthers. And as we've discussed a number of times on this podcast over the last month, like this is going to be a thing, moving forward, where teams are going to probably try to get the Falcons into their nickel by playing 3 wide receivers and just running the football against them. And it's been effective so far. And we'll see if it continues to be effective or the Falcons can, beef up their run defense. So we'll see how that goes. But not a great day for the defense, but certainly, the reason why the Falcons lost is not because of the defense, but it was pretty obvious to me watching the game live. And I told the Locked On Falcons Insiders this, like I basically told them at like 1:30, hey, if you got something better to do today, go do it, because the Falcons are going to ruin your Sunday. And they did indeed ruin many a Sunday today. But it was like the moment I kind of knew like this was going to be a wrap was after Bryce Young scrambled for a touchdown. And I was like, oh, like the week 18 game where Bryce Young scrambled for 2 touchdowns. Hey, we improved, guys. That's improvement, guys. He only got 1 scramble touchdown this time. So progress. We're making progress. Jeff Ulbrich is solving so many problems. It's like that was the moment where it's like, oh, we can't even stop Bryce Young from scrambling for a touchdown. Because we had this conversation about Baker Mayfield's legs. And after week 1, we're like, oh, it's not going to be an issue. And it wasn't as big an issue against J.J. McCarthy, but J.J. McCarthy was able to get outside the pocket and move. And obviously Bryce Young was able to get outside the pocket and move on that one particular play when he needed to. And Jaden Daniels is coming to town. And then Josh Allen is coming to town. And so it's like, all right, okay. And then Mac Jones. Mac Jones rushing 8 carries for 56 yards. Book it now. With the way the Falcons defense is playing at this stage. So, they got some stuff they got to figure out, man. They got some stuff they got to figure out. So this team is, like I said, they're not that good. They're still working on it. And so I'm going to chalk a lot of this up to, early season struggles. Again, man, it feels like you could have worked out some of these kinks if you had played in the season before the season. What? Again, should we call that a preseason? I don't know, man. It's crazy. But we'll wrap up today's episode talking about special teams and why the Falcons got their butts kicked in the third phase of the game. And we'll get into all of that, guys, as we wrap up today's Locked On Falcons. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about the game, not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do that more than others, and they move crowds, they move culture, they keep the game moving forward. And this week's moment that moved the game forward is not by the Atlanta Falcons, it's by Dave Canales, Bryce Young, and Ejiro Evero. Congratulations. You guys really moved the game forward. You have proven to be the kryptonite for this Atlanta Falcons team, and we appreciate you for exposing all of these weaknesses. These are the types of things that build character, and they not only build character, but they move the game forward for this Atlanta Falcons organization. And when you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning, and unexpected outcomes, are only the beginning when it comes to the Atlanta Falcons. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. With the NFL season here, FanDuel wants to make sure you're ready for kickoff with this can't miss offer, because right now new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. If you use, your $5 bet this past weekend to bet the Panthers to cover the 5.5 point spread, like a certain humble podcast host told you to do, hey, guess what? You would have won $300 in bonus bets. And that's the beauty of FanDuel. You could use those newfound winnings on a variety of things. You can bet spreads. You can bet straight up. You can bet, player props. You can bet same game parlays where you can bet a little, win a lot. And this, I think these 3 things are going to happen in this game. Who's going to score the first touchdown? Who's going to pick off a pass? Who's going to get over under 100 yards rushing? All those things are available only at FanDuel. So make sure you download the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel to place your first $5 bet. So special teams matters, right? It stinks. Again, all 3 phases. The Falcons got beat in this game. John Parker Romo, my guy, You won the job last week with a really solid performance. And just like the Falcons, you would come crashing back down to earth. You missed the opening field goal on the opening drive. The Falcons stall again, and you miss a 49-yard kick there. And then later after you muff a punt, after the Panthers muffed the punt, right? You got a special teams boost there. After your second series, you punt it back to Carolina. They muff a punt. You take over. It's like, okay, we didn't have the start we wanted, but we'll make it up here. And then you don't make it up there, and then you settle for a 55-yard field goal, and that's wide left. And then John Parker Romo was never heard from again, thankfully. And so, the Falcons have a kicking situation, right? They moved off a young Leku. Understandably, right? Rightfully, many of you would argue. And I certainly wouldn't have argued against based off of what we knew at the time. It made sense for the Falcons to move off a young Leku this past week. But it feels like, that's aged like camel milk in the middle of Iraq as we sit here today on Sunday after John Parker Romo's 2 missed kick. And so the Falcons, I guess, are they're gonna ride it out with John Parker Romo for another week or two, or are they gonna go back to the drawing board, bring in 5 new kickers, work those guys out, and then see what's what? Because I said it on the Falcon Squad show, like, I think this kicking situation is going to be an issue all season long, based off of what I saw today and what I've seen the last couple of weeks. Like, there's no faith at all in the Falcons kicker as we move forward, whether it's Younghoe Koo, whether it's Lenny Krieg, whether it's John Parker Romo. Maybe they elevate Lenny Krieg and say, let's see what the young guy has, and maybe Lenny's the answer. But there's no reason for me to sit here and think that's going to be the case. There's no reason for me to sit here and think that the Falcons will find the right answer. At least, unlike Riley Patterson, John Parker Romo at least gave us last week's game. So, we'll see if the Falcons solve the problem, but I'm not going to hold my breath, and I wouldn't expect you to hold your breath. So, this is reason number 412 why this offense needs to start cooking, because, boy, I don't think we can trust to get 3 in space. So they got to consistently get 7. But it wasn't just the kicking that struggled in the special teams. It was all kicking, all the special teams. Bradley Pinion was trash. It's just like not being able to punt the ball more than 30 yards in this game, like not being able to pin teams deep at all. I'm not gonna be too harsh on Bradley just because like he's generally been solid for the most part. And so like you can have a bad game. Don't let it happen again, my guy. I promise you, don't let it happen again. I know that sounded so ominous. You better not let it happen. And then to me, beyond the kicking and the punting, the thing that to me was most frustrating about special teams today was the fact that the Falcons could not field a kickoff. Right? Like they muffed so many kickoffs in this game. Right? Ray had a muff. Nathan Carter had a muff. And then he fumbled at the end of the game in garbage time. Like, Nathan, hey man, it was great seeing you, but we you can go to the practice squad, my guy. There's no reason for this dude to have a roster spot at this point. Like, what is it that you do? Right? You don't do nothing. Okay. So Natron Brooks got in, he was muffing stuff. It was just muffs everywhere, just muffing, There's stuff going on in my brain, guys, that I want to say that I'm not going to say because I don't want to get fired. Not over this, okay? But just think about not catching kicks and the name of the quarterback, and it all goes together. So and I'm talking about Kirk, yes, right? So yeah, man, I don't know what else to say, guys. It's just like this is a very forgettable game. They got absolutely their butts kicked. I saw the quote from Raheem after the game. This was a humbling performance. It's like, okay, be humble, again, coming from the most humble podcast host out there. I hope you learn from it. Like, there's nothing really to glean from this game. It's just like, you got your butts kicked. You got to solve these problems. Your quarterback has to be better. Your play calling has to be better. Your special teams have to be better. Your defensive line play has to be better. Your coverage has to be better. You have no explosiveness in your offense. Like, your biggest explosive play was a screen pass to Bijan Robinson. this was an offense, this was a defense that you eviscerated twice last year. You scored 38 points in both of those games, and then you got 0. So deeper than that. We'll judge them based off of how much improvement they make a week from today when they play Washington. But they got a lot of things to figure out. And, there was a part of me that was sitting here, after last week's win being like, oh, am I going to actually have to talk about the Falcons like they're a good football team? And then, very quickly, the Falcons like, no, Aaron, you don't have to worry about that. And like, okay, we can just go back to treating them like they're the mediocre, the bad to mediocre team that they are. Okay, that's fine. I'm glad we got that out of the way now, because I couldn't deal with that disappointment later in the season. So we'll see if the Falcons bounce back from this game. Not a whole lot else to glean from it. I'm definitely looking forward to talking about this game 2 more times this week. So continue to make Locked On Falcons your first listen. Check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to hear more and compelling content about this game here on the illustrious Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And of course, if you want to wash the bitter taste out of your mouth, go check out Locked On NFL. And, they'll get you covered for all the games that happened this weekend. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.